guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Appa in case you guys are new here, and today I have another episode in the graduate entry nursing series, and today I will be talking about academics. I wanted to film this video this past weekend, but I just did not have the time to do so because honestly I just had other plans and I got busy with other people in my life. So yeah, I'm so sorry that I just was not able to film it earlier and post it for you guys. I did film a clinical version of this video, my clinical essentials and tips. In case you guys are interested more in that portion, I will link that down below in the description box. So first thing first, I want to kind of tell you guys is that these are my personal tips, of course. So not all of these tips are going to work for every single one of you. Some of you are really good test takers. Some of you are very, very intelligent and might not need any of these tips. I dropped something, but I study very differently than your average person. So just keep that in mind. And I'm also someone who struggles a lot with test taking, and I do have accommodations for test taking. So that is something that I wanted to let you guys know out front. My accommodations, it's not really that I have a reading disability or anything, but I do have anxiety when it comes to not just test taking, but it's also with like public speaking and some other things. And with test taking, it gets really, really bad that even like the littlest distraction can get to me, and then I start thinking about that distraction, and then I completely just am unable to focus on the exam itself. So I do take my exams by myself. I don't have a clinical diagnosis where I'm taking medication for ADHD, but I do have accommodations when it comes to testing. This was approved this past year by one of the counselors at the university, and she has given me a document because I did not ask for extra time or anything. I just wanted a place where I could test on my own and just not be surrounded by a lot of distraction, a lot of echoing and things like that. And I used to test by myself in undergrad as well for some of my classes, but I never actually formally had any documentations, but now I have achieved those documentations. So I just thought I should mention that. Okay, let's just go ahead and get started with all of my tips. The first tip that I have for you is, obviously this is going to sound very, very straightforward and just very, some of you might be thinking, really, Appa, you really have to tell us to do that? But just like printing out the syllabus of all of your classes and either saving it on your computer or having a printout as well. I personally do the printout route, and that's because I am someone who likes to write things down, and that's something which like really, really helps me. So I would recommend doing this because you guys, you want to know like what homework you're gonna have throughout the whole semester. And the reason why I'm saying this is because you are going to have a lot of itty bitty things when it comes to homework when you're in an accelerated nursing program. It will get to the point where you might even get super duper annoyed, because I know last semester I was kind of losing my mind because one of my professors did not have the assignments listed on a syllabus, and I'm one of those people who needs to know things ahead of time so I can plan my semester ahead of time. And what she would do is like she would keep posting on Canvas every single time, and I really just didn't like that. And it was just one after another discussion post too, and I sometimes felt like it was kind of annoying that she was doing that because we didn't have anything in the syllabus. There was I don't even think there was a syllabus, honestly. So it was just one of those classes. I got through it, but that is something I personally like to do. You don't have to do it, you don't have to print it out, but one thing which I would recommend is at least saving it on your computer. Now, talking of syllabus and printing it out and things like that, another thing which I would highly recommend is, of course, having a planner. I have a fancier planner. I got this from Michaels, I believe, because I'm really into planning and things like that. So you don't have to get as fancy of a planner. You can just get the basic one from Target or Walmart, whichever you want. And what you want to do is you want to write down all of your presentations, all of your assignments, tests, and everything on your calendar. The reason why I'm telling you to do this is, again, it comes down to time with clinicals and all of that. Now I'll show you an example of what my planner looked like at one point. I mean, it was ridiculous how much homework I had and how many clinical hours I was putting. Like, I was in the hospital maybe, I think, 3 times a week. One of them was like a community type of placement, but the other 2 days it was in a hospital. Mondays and Wednesdays, the 2 busiest days, and it just got to the point where I was like, oh my gosh, this is so tiring. And having a planner and having all of your assignments and important days listed out is super duper helpful, just because you guys, you're not really gonna have time to like miss an assignment. You're not really gonna have time to look at your syllabus and see if you're missing a particular assignment. It's just better to have it in a calendar form. That way you're just like not missing points, and that way your grade is not affected. It's just a lot more helpful. I mean, if you like electronic calendars, you can do that too, but having a calendar, having a planner would seriously like help you plan your month out, plan your other events in life out, anything really. So I would highly recommend getting a planner, because there were some people in my program didn't do this planner thing, and holy crap, they had been out of school for a really long time, and they were missing a lot of assignments. And you don't want that happening, especially because when you want to move to advanced practice, you really have to prove to these people in the pre-licensure stage that you're able to do basic nursing before moving on to advanced practice. So that is something I would highly recommend doing. Another thing which kind of really helped me was recording my lecture. I voice recorded a lot of my lectures, especially my med-surg lectures, because she would not put every single thing down on the PowerPoint or give us notes about that. So it was kind of important for me to record her and listen to her, and I did do a lot better in her class the second semester when I did the voice recording thing. So that really helped me. And what I personally would do is I would record the lecture, and then I would listen to the lecture that same evening. This is something they have done a lot of research on as well. A lot of people say that it is just better to review the material the day of the lecture, or at least the week of the lecture, so that it's like fresh in your mind, and that way when the exam comes, you're not really stressing as much or cramming as much. So that is something I personally would recommend to you all. And then a lot of people in my program struggled with health assessment. This was like a really hard class for them, and to me, I mean, the tests were hard because, like I said, I was still trying to figure out, like my testing situation. And, I didn't know that I was gonna get accommodations and that I actually really truly needed them. So that's why I struggled. Did I struggle with the material? Not really, because I am coming from a biology background. I have a lot more depth knowledge when it comes to science in general. So no, the material was not really that tough for me, but a lot of other people, found it a little bit tough when it came to health assessment, because they did not have as strong of a background as I did. and they were coming from like a whole different background, like from social work, arts, psychology, whatever. So one thing which I would highly recommend before even starting a graduate entry program is really familiarizing yourself with anatomy. I say this, you guys, because this will truly help you in advanced practice as well, because even as an RN, I feel like you are doing a lot of health assessment in a hospital setting, at least a depth health assessment. Yeah, you're not diagnosing them at an RN level, but majority of you in a graduate entry program are moving on to an APRN level. So you do kind of need to know what part of the body is, how diseases happen and things like that. So of course, getting familiar with anatomy would be really, really helpful. This resource, which I also mentioned in my other video, is this Anatomy Flashcards by Barron's. It's the second edition. Someone gave this to me and this was super duper helpful, and basically I think I showed this to you in my other video, but let me just pull one out so I can show you guys what I'm talking about. So this is the nervous system, and you can always like quiz yourself because the answers are right at the back. And it's just super important to know this, you guys, because you're helping humans, and it's just important to be familiar with the human anatomy. I mean, it will truly honestly help you with your health assessment class, because a lot of like the lab portion of health assessment is practically anatomy and what you would be doing, and having a good visual idea of what part of the body is where will truly just help you make good clinical judgments as well. So yes, I would highly recommend reviewing your anatomy. They also have a health assessment pocket back version, which you can get as well, and I talked about it in my other video. If you guys want to check it out, I will still put a screenshot of it here, but that is something I would highly recommend. And yeah, using the textbook, and I will put, like I said, I'll put the picture of the textbook because it's kind of heavy to like show it to you, but that textbook is like really, really good, and it's a really good reference for advanced practice as well. So it's honestly, I think it's a textbook which is meant for advanced practice and also physician assistant students. So any APRN or provider role, anyone going into that field, even if you're a medical student, I feel like that book would be like super duper helpful, because it goes in like a lot of detail and highlights some of the things that you will see a lot in a outpatient setting versus a hospital, because there's a difference. Like certain things you will see more commonly in an outpatient setting, and certain things you will do more commonly in an outpatient setting versus an inpatient, where your assessment might be a little bit more detailed depending on whether you're taking in a patient or whether you're taking care of them throughout their course of treatment. So I would highly recommend the pocket back version for your clinicals, and then the big textbook for life. I mean, I feel like that textbook is just so good. It would be helpful for you, especially if you're going into the provider role. I seriously think that would be super duper helpful. Another thing which I want to mention about health assessment is that you can always find flashcards on Quizlets about practice questions, and you guys, it will seriously help you. Those Quizlet questions are like NCLEX style questions, so would highly recommend checking out Quizlet. If you look up your textbook, depending on whatever textbook your program is using, or this Jarvis one which I just mentioned, there's a lot of practice questions, and this like really helped me with the health assessment exams. Okay, so my fifth tip for you is about PathoPhys. Now, some of you guys will like this resource, or you might not like it. It just depends on how much of a depth knowledge you want in when it comes to, like, the science aspect. I personally really enjoy this because, like I said, I love science, and I'm one of those people who likes to go into like itty bitty detail as well. So I personally do enjoy, breaking it down to the cellular level. So this is actually a really, really good resource if you wanna, get the full knowledge of pathophys in a short amount of time. I am reviewing currently still the pathophys because I feel like the pathophys that I took was not something that I was expecting, and I was not really happy with that class during the semester. So I really thought to myself, and I was like, for my own knowledge, for advanced practice, and also for protecting my license, I truly need to understand the pathophys, and I invested in this book. This is the Clinical Pathophysiology Made Ridiculously Simple. This is a really, really good book. It is written by an MD, so it is designed for medical students, PA students, anyone honestly wanting to become a provider, or just go into advanced practice in general. So this is like a really good textbook. Honestly, I have highlighted a lot of it, but that's because I tend to do that when I'm studying, and it just is written in a way that anyone can understand. Like, I feel like even if you don't have a science background, this textbook will make a lot of sense to you. And it's just a really good textbook. It goes over the major systems. I have finished the cardiac and the pulmonary, so I do have to move on, to the renal system, which is also very important, and I'll get to that in a little bit. So this is a really good resource for anyone wanting to master their pathophys. And moving on from pathophys, another very important class that you'll take is pharmacology. Now, the way my program was structured was very, very different, and I kind of wish they would have partnered the pharmacology and pathophysiology in the same semester, because it just makes more sense to me from a studying perspective and also from a scientific perspective, because pharmacology is memorizing a lot of side effects, and there are so many drugs, and you guys, it gets really, really stressful to memorize all of those side effects. I feel like if I was taking pathophys along with pharmacology, it would be a lot easier for me, because then I would know the disease process already, and then be able to connect why we're taking a particular drug, how this particular drug works, if that's making any sense, so because some of these programs might not be structured the way I want it to be structured, like having pharmacology and pathophys the same semester, I would highly recommend, before taking pharmacology, you review the pathophys. If you have not started your graduate entry program yet, I would highly recommend that you go get this book. This is a book which will help you for life, you guys. I'm telling you, trust me. The textbook that I have for my pathophys, I never even touched it. Honestly, in order to get through the class, I never touched it. And I discovered this after my pathophys class, unfortunately, but it was seriously a lot of help to me. So I would highly recommend it. Another thing when it comes down to pharmacology that I would recommend in order to memorize those drugs is obviously having flashcards and just reviewing them over and over again. You guys, this is one of the hardest classes you will probably take in nursing in general. So not just in nursing, honestly, a lot of people struggle with pharmacology. Even medical students struggle with pharmacology. Like in my family members, like they've said they struggled with pharmacology when they were in med school. So one thing which really helped me was, having flashcards. So this was just from the Dollar Tree, so I would highly recommend. And just don't study for pharmacology like last minute. Like I said, like record the lecture and study it that same week. It would just help you a lot, trust me. And review the pathophys, especially for cardiology. You will memorize a lot of cardiac drugs. There's a lot of them, so like making charts and reviewing the cardiac pathophys before you memorize those drugs would just be like truly very, very helpful to you all. Okay, now we are going to talk about some of the main systems which I feel like any nursing student should kind of review in order to understand a lot of things happening with patients. One thing which I would highly recommend is just knowing the RAS system, and I will put the full form of what RAS stands for. Basically, it's to do with your kidneys and your heart and vasoconstriction, vasodilation. I mean, I could totally make a whole separate video on what the RAS system is. It is super duper important that you know this, especially if you're going into critical care or any of those fields. I feel like this would be really important to just know on top of your head. It will help you memorize a lot of the drugs. It will help you make better clinical judgment. It's just super duper important. Another system would be, of course, the cardiac system. I mean, that is honestly one of the more important systems that you need to know, especially in the United States. I feel like we see so many patients with cardiac issues, so reviewing RAS, reviewing cardiac system is super duper important. And just even whether or not you're going into advanced practice or not, I would highly recommend those systems. And if you are going into advanced practice, of course, knowing all of your cranial nerves is also very, very important. And there's a lot of ways you can memorize those cranial nerves as well. Some people use mnemonic and things like that. Some people just draw it out. I will post a picture of the drawing of the cranial nerves right here when I'm editing this video, but it's super duper helpful to know those as well, especially if you're going into advanced practice. Okay, moving on to how to study for NCLEX and NCLEX practice exams. This took me a really long time. I'm not gonna lie to you. The way of thinking really just took me about a semester to learn, because I really just was not studying the right way, I guess, my first semester, because I would focus a lot on the biology of things and not really the NCLEX style of testing. And I truly struggled with it. And one thing which I will recommend is that just doing a lot of practice exams and just getting familiar with the NCLEX style of questions, because it's very, very different than what you would study for when it comes to biology or a chemistry exam. I feel like they're a little bit more straightforward. This one can be a little bit confusing, and it all has to do with being in the scenario and figuring out what is going to be the priority at that situation. So it will take a little bit of time to get used to, especially if you're coming from more of a medical or a science background like I am. It's just not as much on the biology, unfortunately. I kind of wish it was, but that's just now how the exam is designed. So most of your classes will have the NCLEX style of exams, and that is how my accelerated program has it, because the goal is to help you pass the NCLEX in your first go. So that is how most of these exams are going to be designed. So super duper important to get familiar with that type of testing. It's just not something you can memorize. You do have to get familiar with that particular type of testing. So again, like I said, just practice. Practice is the only key. That's kind of how I did it. My school uses Kaplan, and I have my own issues with Kaplan, you guys. Yes, they have decent practice exams, but the only problem I have with Kaplan is that it doesn't really give you the explanation of a question when you got it wrong. Like, so for example, when I take a test, and then it'll tell you, oh, this is the percentile that you scored at, and then it doesn't really show you the exact question that you got wrong. Like, it'll say this is a question that you got wrong in this particular area. It's not gonna give you like the exact question, and that's kind of annoying. So that's one major thing I don't like about Kaplan, is that it doesn't give you you know, the questions, whereas there are some other programs which I've heard are 10 times better than Kaplan. And I did, you know, do use like a trial version of this program, and it's actually called UWorld. A lot of people swear by this, and I think that's what I'm gonna invest in when, you know, my program comes towards the end, is the UWorld, because it's just, I think it's worth it, honestly. Like, some people can, I think you can get up to like 12 month of subscription. I'm not gonna do that. I'm probably just gonna do like 1 month or something, but their explanations are way better than, you know, Kaplan's, and I think they actually show you the questions as well. And a lot of people here on YouTube, like especially people who are even doing like BSN programs, have sworn by it. So it's really, really helpful, more than Kaplan. I feel like Kaplan, I just feel like it just didn't help me. We did remediation and stuff, and honestly, I don't know how much it truly helped me, but I think UWorld might be a better resource for you guys. So don't go for the Kaplan, please go for UWorld, because I did do a trial. You can do the trial for yourself and figure it out, but I would not recommend Kaplan. Okay, so the final thing which I do want to kind of mention, maybe the second to last final thing, is that what you see in the hospital is not always going to be textbook perfect. This is something very important to know, because when it comes to clinical settings, you guys, what you'll see is a lot more complex than like what you see in the textbook, if it's making any sense. This comes down to whether you're like seeing the actual patient and what they would really look like, or like whatever problem they're having as well. Like this one time, you know, there was a patient who came in with, I think he had a cardiac problem, but then they also found out that he had lung cancer. So they really had to decide whether or not they were going to prioritize the cancer or his heart transplant. These are some of the examples which you might not really see in textbooks. So just keeping your mind like open about situations that come into the hospital, and they're not always going to match your NCLEX questions. And one thing which I do want to remind you guys, like even if you're not an A-star student, I am not someone who gets all A's, okay? Like I am not, but I am a pretty darn good clinician, okay? And I know that, and I know that I will be able to make really good clinical judgments in the near future. And a lot of my instructors have told me to consider like inpatient setting as my specialty, but I'm going into primary care, and even with that I'm hoping to, you know, wing back into the hospital setting. So basically what I'm trying to say is that even if you don't get all A's, like don't be disappointed. Like people in my program, honestly, some of them, I hate to say this, but like they are all-star A students, but they're only book smart and they don't really have the best clinical judgment. And at the end of the day, clinical judgment is what really matters, not really your grades. My suggestion to all of you going into advanced practice and are in this accelerated MSN program, kind of like what I'm in, just make it a goal to have above a 3.0 in all of your classes. And I say don't stress over getting all A's and being on the honor roll and things like that. Like, there are some people in my program, like, they're putting pictures of their grades of having all A's on Facebook, and first of all, I find that so childish. Like, oh my gosh, like, what in the world? I'm not gonna go too much into that because that person is just a whole different person, and we're just not gonna go into that. But basically, don't be intimidated by what others are doing. Focus on you. Focus on what is important to you. Honestly, to me, what is important is getting into advanced practice. At this point, I'm not really as concerned about getting all A's in the pre-licensure stage. So just doing what's important for you is something that you should be focusing on, and just don't compare yourself to what others are doing. I mean, that's their life choice, that's them. They are good on pen and paper. Are they the best clinicians? Maybe or maybe not, and who the heck cares? Like, just don't care, just do you, and yeah, just focus on yourself. So that is all that I have for you today. Thank you so much, you guys, for watching, and talk to you guys later. Bye.